Gin does games!
Hello ladies and gentlemen, Gin here with another League of Legends guide for you. I'll cut right to the chase. Today we're talking about Teemo, the Swift Scout, the most lovable, adorable, irritating little fuzzball in the league. No, seriously, just look at that smug little mug. Don't you just want to punch him in the face? Alas, we are not here to discuss the many methods of Teemo torture. Today we must teach him success. It's time to learn how to Teemo. Teemo is an odd champion. He's certainly fun to play, I'll give you that, but anyone who's played even a single game against him can tell you how frustrating he is to have on the other team. His skill set lends itself to diving in and out of combat, running all over the map, providing vision, and harassing the enemy over time with blinds and poisons. He can be built a variety of ways, from a tanky, unkillable terror, to an AP burster, to an on-hit machine that drops a ton of effects on the enemy with every attack. Teemo can fill any position on the field, though some better than others. We'll get into that later. Teemo's passive is Camouflage. If he stands still and does nothing for 2 seconds, Teemo becomes stealthed. If he does either of those things, he breaks his stealth and gains a 40% attack speed boost for 3 seconds. Enemies can still hit him with skill shots while invisible, but they won't break his invisibility unless it causes him to move, like Maokai's Arcane Smash. This is useful for either starting fights with greater attack speed and the element of surprise, or for escaping, getting just far enough away for the enemy to sit still and lose him. Teemo's not-so-secret passive is Teemo Taunt. Teemo frustrates players to no end, often driving them to try and kill him even when there's no possible way it could be a good idea. They will dive towers, they will rush through your entire team, anything to kill that Teemo. Teemo Taunt, too strong. Back to the land of Sirius for a brief moment, we reach the Scout's Q, Blinding Dart. It does just what it says on the tin. He fires a dart that deals magic damage and blinds the target for a brief duration. This is one of only 2 blinds left in the game. It's very, very powerful against any champion that relies on auto attacks, because it causes them to miss every time they try until it runs out. In the laning phase, this is perfect for messing up anyone's attempt at last hitting. It scales quite well with AP and has a short cooldown. Despite all this power though, we shall max it out second in most cases. The little Yordle's W is Move Quick. Kind of self-explanatory again, isn't it? Passively, it grants Teemo significant bonus move speed until struck by a champion or a turret, at which point he'll get it back again after 5 seconds. When activated, he gains double the passive bonus for 5 seconds, and then regains the normal passive, regardless of if he was hit or not during that duration. This percentage speed boost is really quite powerful. A point in it is even enough to let him put off buying boots longer than usual. The active has a fairly long cooldown, and leveling only increases the move speed, which is awesome, but usually not too important earlier. As such, we'll take a point in it early and max it out last. Teemo's E is a passive that you can level up, Toxic Shot. That's right, more blow darts. Teemo adds a poison to his auto attacks, dealing extra magic damage when he hits, and then poisoning them with even more magic damage over the next 4 seconds. The poison doesn't stack with itself, but subsequent attacks will refresh the duration each time they hit. As you might guess, not only is this amazing for harassing your enemies, it helps you last hit as well. Even if you don't get the hit on that first shot, the poison may give it to you anyway. Poking and poisoning your enemies constantly will discourage them from last hitting, and eventually get them low enough that you run up and burst them down to 0. Max this out first for maximum damage. If going right into lane, you probably want to take a point in this at first level, but if you get involved in a team fight before minions spawn, Blinding Dart will help you out much more. Finally, the ultimate, the signature move, the Mushroom. Teemo's R is Noxious Trap. Every several seconds, Teemo stores a trap charge, up to a maximum of 3. You can spend one of these charges to place a trap, be it in the form of mushroom, egg, satellite dish, hero's signal, or delicious rice dumpling. These traps go invisible after a moment, at which point they are armed to explode. While untouched, a trap grants a small amount of vision around it, and lasts for a full 10 minutes, regardless of how many traps you have on the map. If an enemy champion, minion, or monster walks over a trap, it will explode, dealing magic poison damage and slowing them and everything around them for 4 seconds. Just like Toxic Shot, multiple poisons won't stack, but will refresh the duration each time. There's a brief 1-second cooldown between placing your mushroom traps, but that's not all that important. It is important, though, that the time it takes to store a new trap charge is affected by cooldown reduction. As you might have guessed, this is where most of the frustration and annoyance comes in. Poison? I can deal with that. Blind? Irritating, but okay. Constantly running into invisible poisoning, slowing traps that there can be up to 40 of on the map at any given time. Oh, you start building some concentrated rage right there. None of that watered down stuff for Teemo's opponents, only the purest, most insufferable rage imaginable, all caused by the most sickeningly adorable little fluffball that Riot could design. On the plus side, for the Teemo player, Noxious Trap not only gives you tons of random damage and sometimes even free kills, they're essentially free wards, even on maps where wards aren't allowed. And we all know how important wards are, right? Right? For more damage, more slowing, and more abundant shroomage, take a point in Noxious Trap every chance you can. Runes and masteries on Teemo are quite valuable, but I'll give you a few solid options here. For runes, I prefer a setup that lends itself to survivability, with attack speed marks, flat armor seals, magic resistance per level glyphs, and movement speed quintessences. A Teemo that doesn't die is all the more annoying, making that Teemo taunt all the stronger. If I'm going for a more bursty AP build, as well as some earlier game power, I take magic penetration marks, mana regeneration per level seals, AP per level glyphs, and flat AP quintessences. Though the mana regen may seem out of place, I found that it is more useful later in the game when you start dropping shrooms everywhere. Teemo can stay on the field for a long time, and these will help. For masteries, my goals mirror my runes, and I prefer 9-21-0, getting attack speed and AP in the offense tree, and lots of tankiness and defense. As squishy as it looks, Teemo can get really hard to kill. Masteries for Teemo can be whatever you want though really, so long as you have a goal in mind. 21-9-0 or 21-0-9 work great for a class cannon sort of build. 9-0-21 or 0-9-21 are great for support Teemo shenanigans. Summoner spells are simpler at least. I really like to take Exhaust. Blinding Dart, into Exhaust, into another Blinding Dart, effectively shuts an enemy down for up to 8 seconds. Flash is great, as always, for getting out of sticky situations. Ignite is a powerful tool for burning down the enemy, no pun intended. The dot from that and your poison will crush a large chunk of anyone's health. And finally, consider Teleport. You and any ally can teleport to your Noxious Traps, so always consider that when placing your mushrooms. Itemization on Teemo is just about as wildly variant as his runes and masteries were. There's a couple things to consider about it. Firstly, his attack speed scaling is pretty crazy. This makes anything with an on-hit ability highly attractive. His AP scaling is also quite solid. Not amazing, but enough AP will get your enemies pretty low in a few poisonous pokes, and a mushroom might get you a random kill in the jungle. Lastly, he's pretty tanky for a fuzzball, so making him harder to kill is always desirable. So let's look at these options individually. You can always mix and match. An on-hit build is what Riot recommends for Teemo. Doran's Blade is a good start for a little more damage and self-sustain in the lane. You could also start with an Amplifying Tome, Boots of Speed, or a Longsword, whatever you think will benefit you most at the start. If you choose the Tome or the Sword though, these should be in keeping with what you want to build first. The Amplifying Tome can turn into a Malady, which gives you some attack speed, magic resist shred, and more damage to go with your already poisonous shots. It scales well into the later game too. The Longsword could become a Phage, which will give you a slow and start Teemo down the road of being a tanky pest. That can also become a Frozen Mallet later, for fun and profit. Boots you'll get at some point anyway, but Berserker's Greaves are an excellent choice on Teemo under any circumstance. The rest of an on-hit build is finished off nicely by the many items listed as offensive for Teemo. Runon's Hurricane in particular is pretty crazy. The additional attacks it gives all apply on-hit effects as well, including Toxic Shot, Malady, Frozen Mallet, or, I don't know, Blade of the Ruined King and Wit's End. More damage, more tankiness, and one of them steals % health? Heck yeah! The other offensive item, Liandry's Torment, I consider more an AP item, but it's great nonetheless. Its effect doesn't work with Toxic Shot's poison, but it does work with Blinding Dart and Noxious Trap. In fact, it works at full effect with Noxious Trap. Though it only does half the normal effect for being a poison over time as you'd expect, that is doubled back to normal levels because they are also slowed. Also with AP Teemo, consider Malady as mentioned, Rylai's Crystal Scepter to add a slow, Sorcerer's Shoes for boots, Nashor's Tooth for the cooldown reduction and attack speed in particular, and Rabadon's Death Cap to deal insane damage with your shrooms. Lastly, some tanky items to consider. You've already heard Frozen Mallet, well, how about Warmog's Armor? Let's just make him impossible to kill, why don't we? Zephyr will give you a ton of different bonuses, all useful on Teemo. In fact, with all this silliness, you can take boosts of mobility to hop in and out of fights even faster. Consider all these and more while building Teemo. Almost anything can be made to work. I mentioned at the start that Teemo can take most any position. Let's talk about how. Top lane is where he shines most commonly. His range and blind let him harass to death the tanky bruisers that tend to sit there and snowball until they're needed. He's a solid counterpick against most melee champions there. In the middle, building AP gives him solid poke and burst potential as well as giving him the most room to run up and down to drop shrooms, unless of course he's jungling. Jungle Teemo is perhaps his worst spot. He clears the jungle fairly well, and the ability to drop free wards is great, but he can't 1v1 others very well at the start, and his ganks aren't all that awesome. Still, if you must, a roaming Teemo is always frustrating for the enemy. In bottom lane, he can fill either role. Though many might initially peg him as an AD carry with his attack speed steroid and ease of last hitting, his range is a little too short to stand toe-to-toe with most carries for farming in the same lane. Doable, but difficult. I prefer him as a support. Blind the carry so they can't farm, and drop your free wards everywhere. With your mushrooms acting like sight wards, you can spend all that extra money on vision wards instead to destroy your enemy's view of the world. Speaking of blinding things, let's talk about when you should use Blinding Dart. Obviously, you want to use it right before they last hit so that they miss, but I mean in particular just trying to harass them. The best time to do so is right after an auto attack. Once the missile's flying, casting the dart essentially ends the attack animation and sends the blinding shot flying, a 1-2 punch of awesome. Once you have your Noxious Trap ability, place them as often as possible. The more you have on the map, the more you can see and the more chance to damage your enemies. When placing them though, consider what you want to use them for. Do you want them to be hit? Or do you just want a 10-minute ward? If you just want the ward, say on their blue buff, place it off to the side where the monsters generally won't go. Or, if you're warding Dragon and a Baron, place one behind it in addition to one in front so you have continued vision when they break the first. If you do want them to be hit, think about where your enemies walk. Fill every bush with mushrooms, place them close to the walls where the computer's auto-pathing will make them walk. Play mind games with them. If they get hit with a shroom in a bush, they might avoid that bush in the future. So put one just outside it so they'll hit one anyway. Think evil. And don't forget to place mushrooms during combat. They take a moment to arm, but if you place it in the middle of your enemies, it's bound to explode and slow them all. Blind the carry, poison everyone, and irritate them all. Teemo taunt, too strong. And with that, thanks for watching. If you have enjoyed this guide, please let me know by hitting the like button. Speak up in the comments below if you have advice or questions. We're all here to learn. Subscribe for future content, including champion guides, gameplay guides, and other possibly not LOL content if you want. Till next time, I've been Gin, and you've been watching me talk about a video game.